Venus Unveiled. The secrets your teacher never told you about the planet of love and hell. The mirage of Venus, the most treacherous planet in the solar system. Venus, that bright spot in the sky that many mistake for a beacon of hope, is actually a hellish ball disguised as beauty. Although from afar it seems like a peaceful and seductive planet, wrapped in a soft blanket of clouds, what it hides beneath is a chemical storm and a heat inferno that surpasses any apocalyptic movie. Its atmosphere, with a pressure 92 times that of Earth, would effortlessly crush any intrepid explorer. And no, this is not a science fiction manual exaggeration, but a cruel reality that astronauts could only face with a spacesuit from another planet, literally. This planet, the second from the Sun, orbits 108 million kilometers from us, maintaining an almost circular trajectory that reflects its meticulously calculated nature. But here the curiosity does not end. Venus rotates opposite to all the other planets, like that neighbor who always wants to go against the current. Its rotation is so slow that a Venusian day lasts longer than a year on Venus, which means you would experience less than 2 sunrises if you dared to spend a whole year there. Now that's taking it easy, isn't it? Even more striking is that, despite being farther from the Sun than Mercury, Venus surpasses its smaller sibling in temperature with more than 460 degrees Celsius. The reason is simple but terrifying. Its dense atmosphere, saturated with carbon dioxide and wrapped in clouds of sulfuric acid, creates the most extreme greenhouse effect in our solar system. The heat does not escape, and the surface becomes a constant oven, where nights are no relief because the thermostat never lowers. Not only that, winds at the cloud level reach speeds of 300 kilometers per hour, circling the planet in barely 4 or 5 Earth days. Meanwhile, on the surface, winds barely blow, but the atmospheric pressure is so crushing that it could flatten a house without messing up its hair. As if that were not enough, Venus is the only planet without its own magnetic field, so solar and cosmic radiation hit its atmosphere directly, creating electrical storms and a gas tail that sometimes brushes Earth. The first attempts to explore Venus were carried out by the Soviet Union, which between the 60s and 80s sent several Venera probes. The Pioneer, Venera 7, was the first to touch the surface of another planet and survive long enough to send data, revealing hellish temperatures and conditions no human would want to experience. These missions gave us the first images of a rocky ground, covered by eternal clouds that prevent seeing its surface from space. Venus is dotted with volcanoes, more than 160, with diameters greater than 100 kilometers, but with a crust much older than Earth's because it has no plate tectonics. Its surface is mostly covered by solidified lava from a global event that renewed the planet several 100 million years ago, creating a desolate and dangerous landscape. It is impossible to talk about Venus without mentioning its acidic atmosphere, which in the form of corrosive rain intensifies the infernal conditions. Despite this, there is a curious region, about 50 kilometers high, where the pressure and temperature are similar to Earth's, a place where, theoretically, we could float in balloons without dying instantly. But of course, breathing would be another matter. So next time you admire Venus in the sky, remember that behind that charming glow there is a treacherous giant that shows us that beauty can be deceiving, and that the planet of love is actually the planet of hell in disguise. The backwards dance, the strange rotation and orbit of Venus. Venus is not only the hottest and most poisonous planet in our solar system, but also the most eccentric when it comes to how it spins and moves. While all the other planets rotate counterclockwise, as if following a celestial choreography, Venus decided to do the exact opposite. Its rotation is retrograde, which means it spins clockwise, a true planetary rebel that defies the established rules. This detail is not only curious, but has implications that have puzzled astronomers for decades. Imagine that a day on Venus lasts 243 Earth days, which is already a clear sign that time there is not for the hurried. But the most mind-blowing part is that a Venusian year, meaning the time it takes to orbit the Sun once, lasts only 224 Earth days. The consequence? The day is longer than the year, a kind of time paradox that would drive any clock fanatic crazy. Scientists speculate that this peculiar rotation could be the result of a gigantic impact that Venus suffered billions of years ago, or perhaps due to a strange gravitational interaction with the Sun. What is clear is that this slow and peculiar spin contributes to its infernal environment because while Venus barely rotates, its atmosphere seems to have a life of its own, spinning around the planet at dizzying speeds that can reach 300 kilometers per hour. Venus's orbit also has its quirks. Although it orbits the Sun at an average distance of 108 million kilometers, its path is practically a perfect circle, the most circular of all planetary orbits. This means there are no big variations in its distance from the Sun, which in turn contributes to the stability of its constant infernal temperature. Also, Venus comes closer to Earth than any other planet, at just 41 million kilometers, and yet it is not the brightest object in our sky at those moments. This is because when it is closest, its visible face is the dark side, the one facing the sun, leaving us with the shadow and not the glory of its reflection. Throughout history, Venus has been mistaken for extraterrestrial spacecraft due to its impressive brightness, which led to more than one UFO sighting. Even a former president of the United States, Jimmy Carter, reported seeing a UFO in 1969 that was later found to probably be Venus. Not bad for a planet that has inspired so much mystery and misinformation. Additionally, Venus stars in a rather rare astronomical phenomenon, the transits of Venus. They occur in pairs approximately every 102 years, when Venus passes directly between Earth and the Sun, crossing the solar disk and offering a spectacle that only a few in history have been able to witness. The last transit occurred in 2012, and the next will be in 1117. So, if you were waiting to see it live, you better start preparing your telescope for quite some time from now. With all these orbital and rotational peculiarities, Venus remains one of the most fascinating and puzzling planets in our solar system, showing that nature sometimes has a sense of humor and plays with the rules of time and space as it pleases. The Venusian surface, a landscape of fire and rock that seems from another world. If you thought Venus was just a gaseous chaos, get ready to discover its surface, which looks like it came out of a science fiction movie mixed with a natural disaster documentary. Thanks to the Soviet Venera missions, which in the 70s and 80s managed to land probes and send the first real images from that inferno, we know that the Venusian surface is a place dominated by cold lava, but without the hustle and bustle of constantly active volcanoes, rather with a dangerous calm that hides a tremendous volcanic past. Venus has more than 160 large volcanoes that exceed 100 kilometers in diameter, a number that could make Hawaii seem like a simple geological picnic. These volcanoes are not only gigantic, but most are formed by plains of solidified lava covering approximately 80% of the planet. Imagine an ocean of frozen molten rock, so vast that you don't know if it's a petrified sea or an alien landscape painted by the hand of an artist with too much free time. But don't get too excited thinking Venus is a constantly erupting volcano. Its crust is old, very old. While Earth renews its surface every 100 million years thanks to its tectonic dynamics, Venus has a crust that can be between 300 and 600 million years old. The reason? It has no tectonic plates to recycle the surface, so it remains static, making it a kind of geological museum frozen in time. What did happen, and here's where it gets interesting, was a global resurfacing event hundreds of millions of years ago. During that cataclysm, the crust heated up so much that it fractured, allowing lava to cover most of the planet in a kind of coating that radically changed the landscape. This explains why Venus looks so uniform and covered with those volcanic plains dominating the whole scene. Furthermore, the surface is dotted with nearly 900 impact craters. But there's a curious detail: there are no small craters. Everything smaller than 50 meters disintegrates before hitting the ground due to the dense atmosphere, which acts like a gigantic shield. This means that Venus, despite its proximity to the Sun, has a kind of atmospheric protection that lets only large impacts survive to leave their mark, making the landscape a mix of old and new. This scenario of huge volcanoes, lava plains, and craters is not a place for Sunday strolls. Imagine temperatures that melt lead and pressure that crushes your body until you feel like a crushed can. And, of course, that corrosive sulfuric acid that, although it doesn't reach the ground, forms poisonous clouds that envelop everything in a lethal aura. But, as if this were not enough to keep the curious away, Venus also lacks a global magnetic field. This means it is directly exposed to solar wind, that stream of charged particles that can be brutal for any atmosphere. This constant hit generates an induced magnetosphere, a kind of temporary bubble created by the interaction of the atmosphere with the solar wind, but it doesn't protect like Earth's magnetic shield does. In summary, the surface of Venus is a place where geological history shows itself in its maximum expression, with gigantic volcanoes and an ancient crust, all under an acid sky and a relentless atmosphere. It's not the vacation destination one would choose, but it is one of the most fascinating places to study how Earth-like planets can function when hell decides to take control. And that concludes our journey to the planet that seems like a cosmic romance but is more of a nightmare of heat and acid. If discovering what Venus really is, its secrets, and the crazy turns it takes in space blew your mind, you know what to do. Subscribe to Mind-Blown Space to not miss any cosmic madness we have prepared. Leave us in the comments which fact left you speechless, or what planet you want us to dissect in the next video. And remember, in space, no one can hear your excuses, but here we can definitely read your opinions. See you on the next space adventure.